Batman movies have their own pros and cons. Each director and creative team attached to each iteration bring their own creative visions and spins to the classic hero. Each iteration of Batman also draw upon many different comic iterations of the character in order to help shape that new version. However, what happens when a director prioritizes his creative vision over actual comic accuracy? Well, then you end up with Tim Burton's Batman, arguably the version that most radically departs from its original source material. Let's make one thing clear, Tim Burton's Batman films are nothing like how Batman comics were like at the time. He took a lot of creative liberties when it came to bringing Batman to the big screen. Some great and others not so great. He's already admitted to never reading a Batman comic, so the changes do make sense. So in this video, I want to look at the changes Tim Burton made to Batman and his mythos and the deviations he made from the comics. Anyways, thank you for clicking on the video, and let's get started. This is a Batman movie after all, so we of course have to take a look at him first. Now, Michael Keaton, who was cast as Batman, was not exactly the most muscular man to play the Caped Crusader at the time. Not only did he have a smaller frame, but he was also quite short compared to Batman's canonical height. Now, since his body was much smaller than Batman from the comics, they were obviously not going to give him a skin-tight fabric that most comic versions were wearing at the time. Not only had it already been done in live action before him, but it would honestly look ridiculous and wouldn't fit in with the darker world Burton had created. So of course, Burton opted to make his suit out of molded rubber, which in universe was a bulletproof body armor. Also, Michael Keaton's Batman is the only Batman who wears Air Jordans. I guess I also must mention that this Batman's parents were killed by a young Jack Napier instead of a random mugger or Joe Chill, like in the original comics. Now when it comes to the Batmobile, I can't begin to describe how much of a radical departure it was. Now some people believe that the Batmobile was always this cool and unique looking vehicle, but that's not farther from the truth. If you ignore how the Batmobile looked like in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, the Batmobile before Tim Burton's films was just a modified car that Bruce presumably built himself. Tim Burton's Batmobile looked like it was built in the future, looking more like an alien vehicle compared to the other Batmobiles at the time. Its radically different look and extreme abundance of gadgets and gear went on to influence the Batmobiles that preceded it. Enough with the Batsuit and Batmobile, how does Batman hold up to his comic counterpart? Well, he's definitely different. Now, he does share some similarities, but the big difference is that this Batman is a crazy, cold-blooded murderer. Now, I know Batman had killed in the comics before this film came out, but unlike the comic version, Tim Burton's Batman seemed to enjoy killing his foes, even going as far as to smile before murdering them. Tim Burton's Batman definitely felt much more unhinged and emotionless compared to his previous iterations, even the ones that appeared after him. I think out of every version of Bruce Wayne we've seen on the big screen so far, Tim Burton's Bruce Wayne felt the most like an act, a fake persona he put on, to hide his real, more murderous persona. Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, isn't too much of a departure from her comic counterpart. She was seductive and a mischievous burglar in the comics that wore a cat outfit, and the exact same thing can be said for the film version. However, the film version had a considerable amount of emotional depth compared to the comics. When it comes to her origin story, there was really no incentive for the film version to follow it, since Selina in the comics didn't have a definitive origin story. Add in the fact that Tim Burton already didn't exactly stay true to the original comic origins, and you can see why he went for such an outlandish origin story for Selina. Her suit was also quite different from how it looked in the comics. The black latex and stitching was a far cry from Selina's original attire at the time. Danny DeVito's Penguin has all the attributes that would make him comic accurate. He's short, he waddles, he has an umbrella, a top hat, and a long nose. However, that's where the similarities end. Although Penguin has some comic accurate aspects to him, there's also equally as much aspects that differentiate him hugely from the comics. For one thing, this Penguin is extremely unsettling, acts like a child sometimes, and is extremely mentally disturbed. Compared to the comic version that was suave and more refined. The black goo that sometimes came out of his mouth was a nice touch and all, but it made him more of a Tim Burton-esque monster rather than a classy mobster. When it comes to the Joker, he isn't much different from his comic counterpart. Burton's Joker also follows the same overall origin story of falling into a chemical vat. However, Burton's Joker was a criminal working for the mob instead of being a comedian down on his luck or a retired lab worker. Burton's Joker is also not portrayed as a crazy murdering lunatic or annoying prank-loving clown. Instead, Burton's Joker was portrayed as a narcissistic criminal who just loves money and women. Basically, he was just a regular mobster with clown makeup. Now, the element in my opinion that most strays from the original comic version is Gotham City. Gotham before Tim Burton's Batman was just a regular city with not much defining traits. This was perfectly reflected in the Adam West TV show and the TV serials. Some stories did take some creative liberties with Gotham, like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, that portrayed Gotham as a dystopian city in the midst of a massive crime wave. Apart from that version of Gotham City, Gotham wasn't really the first thing that popped into your head when you thought about Batman. Well, until Tim Burton introduced the world to his take on Gotham. Tim Burton's Gotham was completely different and unique from all the other versions. Production designer Anton Furst, Tim Burton and cinematographer Roger Pratt worked together to bring us a dark, gothic, crowded, and neon-filled city we had never seen before. Tim Burton's new and fresh approach to Gotham did go on to influence multiple versions of Gotham City to come. Tim Burton's unique vision gave us a version of Batman we had never seen before. Whether that was good or bad is up to who you ask, but you can't deny that his influence definitely affected Batman for years to come.
The movie promises to stick closer to the comic book version.
That was a fucking lie.